Okay, well, welcome to Captive Audience. We have a special guest tonight. I'm Sunny Danforth. I'm the chair of Umatilla County Republican Party. And tonight, I'm very happy to have a special guest with us tonight is Senator Dallas Hurd of District 1 and also the chairman of the Oregon Republican Party.
How you doing?
Real good, real good. Thank you, Dallas, so much for joining us here and on our special edition of Captive Audience. So you are on 3 committees, the Healthcare, Judiciary, and Ballot Measure 110 implementation, and you're also the vice chair on Natural Resources and Wildfire Recovery Committee. Now, you were just stating as we were coming on that you just had an incredible day in the Judiciary Committee. Would you like to share a little about that?
Absolutely, and thank you for inviting me to come on, Sunny. Yeah, no, it's this is fast becoming the most reckless legislative session by some margin that I've ever experienced, and the previous 6 years were intense. So yeah, I don't know the exact number, but I think we passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee this morning about 20 bills, and it's just madness to watch the Democratic supermajority that you just can't possibly be doing a thorough good job. I mean, you could put the political perspective and the ideology, just set that aside for a second. The sheer number and volume of bills that they are putting through and the pace they're going, you can't possibly be responsible in your legislation at that pace.
No, you're absolutely right there. And so I want to say that I really appreciate you joining us, tonight on Captive Audience. And last week, as you know, we had Senator Fred Girod on, and I thought it would be good to have you on as well. You know, the media is not always friendly, and it often takes comments out of context. And this is a way, our Captive Audience is a way of you having the narrative that you wish people to hear. But as a senator and the chair of the Oregon Republican Party, I feel it's good to have you speak on the same issues that Senator Girod did last week, and more, of course.
Sure.
So I want to approach this from 2 sides. You wear 2 hats in the public forum. So first, let's start with the Senate hat, and we will conclude with the ORP hat. Does
Perfect.
that sound good?
Sounds perfect.
Okay, and we're just going to dive right in. But I'm trying to get us onto our Facebook thing here so I can see people comments and questions, but I haven't seen that yet. I don't know why. Well, so this session in the Senate looks like none other I've seen. In fact, we were talking about that right before we got launched here. And last week, Senator Girod was speaking about the walkout on Senate Bill 554. So 6 senators stayed, 5 walked. And so please share with our audience why you joined 4 other senators and walked out.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, for me, it's just been watching our colleagues on the left side of the aisle with the Democrats, whether it's the House or Senate or Kate Brown, it doesn't really matter. They really are in lockstep in the way they're going about things. You know, traditionally speaking, the House has been where all the craziness starts, and the Senate is the cooling saucer where, you know, reason and logic takes over and things kind of get slowed down. I'm not seeing that anymore. And so for me, the walkout or protest, if you will, is critical for minority rights. That's the thing that is being overlooked at this point with the pure democracy model that the Democratic Party is trying to force upon our culture at this point. They always say we're a democracy. Well, we're a representative republic with a constitution, the Bill of Rights, negative rights, as I call them, and other people call them, meaning what the government can't do to us. And that's all really being lost in this pure democracy mob rule way of looking at things. And so the quorum rules are put in place to protect the political minority. It doesn't matter if it's a political minority based on race or income, geographic population location, things, you name it. Anyone that is the weaker, the lesser, right? And that's really what has made America, as we've gone through this journey and this great experiment, the kind of place that people float on car hoods from Cuba to Florida to come here. They're not going the other direction from Florida to Cuba. It's a one-way situation. People come here out of complete desperation, oftentimes risking life and limb just to have a chance at freedom. And a lot of that is just being washed away under the pure democracy model. I've said it to a lot of folks. A dictatorship is almost less concerning to me than mob rule. With a dictatorship like we have with Kate Brown, ironically, in this state, we're experiencing both right now. With a dictator, you have one person you have to defeat politically. With mob rule, that means it's the strongest survive, the many dominate. And so it's just really concerning to see what we have happening here in Oregon. And when it comes to our Second Amendment rights, that, there's all rights are precious and need to be protected at all costs. For an individual like myself serving in the Senate, I raised my hand to serve, not so I could have a title, and this is for me, I'm speaking for me personally, what my values are and what motivates me to do these things. I really take my role to serve my community serious. The disenfranchised people all across Oregon need a champion, they need an advocate. And so if denying, one of the things that we talked about in our campaigns last cycle was that we needed to maintain our numbers and hopefully grow them. And we were this close to growing them, not just one, but a net 2. But sadly, we stayed at the same number of 12. And the thing is a lot of our constituents worked really hard. I mean, yourself, Sonny, people like yourself at the Republican Central Committees and county chapters across the state, we all worked really hard to keep and grow our numbers. So in part, we have the numbers and strength that in that Hail Mary effort where the Democrats just aren't willing to compromise at a reasonable level, aren't willing to show us respect, those of us in the minority politically, that we have to say, okay, time out. We're not going to give you numbers that then gives you the opportunity and the tool to take our fundamental rights away. And so it's a negotiation tactic. It's never been my plan or thought process to walk off and not come back for 3 or 4 months. That's not the way you can govern properly. We are required by the Constitution of Oregon to generate and pass a state budget. And so you would always have to come back and finish the situation and finish it well. But you must show the majority that you mean business at some point. If people like the Democrats that are running things right now, if they start to get the smell of blood in the water, that you're not willing to do whatever it takes to oppose them, it's that whole give them an inch, they take a mile. In this case, they take 10 miles.
Okay, but at the same time, okay, I hear you. But at the same time, there's other legislation that has to go on. And, I'll tell you, the walkout was very effective in the short session, super effective. And my own senator, I had talked with him and I said, you know what, I support you either way. I see both sides of this and I support you either way of what you need to do, because as it's very easy to be the armchair quarterback and they should have done this and they should have done that. But you and like my senator and the other senators you have a lot more inside information as to what's going on behind the scenes. And that's where I think a lot of people don't think about that. There's, because more bills that are coming down the pike than we're aware, even though we try to be as aware as we can and be supportive and make comments and all of that. And so it is very difficult to just say one or the other. So it is surprising. There's still a lot of talk about the walkout on Senate Bill 554.
Yeah, and so for me, again, it's a negotiation type situation. If your opponent in this case, or the political opponent, I don't want to go as far as say the enemy, but it's getting awful close. The political opponents that we face right now, they don't respect us, and I'm not talking about us as individuals. I'm saying they do not respect the constituents, the voters that put us in office. The rights that are being stripped away. For some reason, Second Amendment rights are just not important to the Democratic Party. I don't think that's the case.
They're very important. That's why they want to strip us of them. because they know once you take that, the rest of it falls.
Well, and what's interesting is I think a lot of Democratic voters, though, the Second Amendment is very important to them, but the party leadership really has taken a very draconian stance of they're going to take everything they possibly can get their hands on when it comes to that very precious right. And they're even, it's now starting to bleed into the First Amendment as well. You look at the nationwide effort to censor, whether it's big tech or the political efforts that are combined with them. It's just becoming very obvious that opposition is not welcome, debate is not welcome. Anyone who stands in our way, meaning the Democrats, they're just going to crush us. And so that's where I'm coming from, is that I've seen it work in the past. I believe it can work again. You slow down, at the very least, you slow down this reckless train, because there's a lot more bad bills coming. That's the thing, is there's still dozens, if not hundreds, of really bad bills coming. And it's, in my opinion, it's setting a dangerous trend, the current track we're on.
Okay, so just hypothetical, if, let's say, you all walked and denied a quorum, they could have brought that bill back tomorrow.
They could, and that's where you referenced wisely so the inside baseball, if you will, the behind the scenes negotiations and whatnot. It comes down to priorities, not just for us, but for them. We often, it's easy to forget that our opponent is not just some machine. They have priorities. They have things that get them wound up. They have things that make them fearful, make them joyful, make them excited. And so there's a lot of things on the table, not just 554 and gun bill related rights, Second Amendment related rights. There's the budgetary items. A lot of the Democratic Senate and House members are really gunning for a substantial amount of that stimulus money to come to their districts and whatnot. So there's all sorts of different tools and bargaining chips at the table. And so you're exactly right. They could bring it back, but that's where the negotiation comes in behind the scenes. And you can bring it out into the public too. I like to talk about it openly and as transparently as we possibly can, because let's face it, it's the behind the scenes smoke-filled room stuff that is what is really wrong with American politics at this point, and it's hurting our culture. It's destroying our way of life. It's destroying the Constitution. But yeah, if you negotiate strongly, I've seen it in the past where, okay, hey, these 5 or 6 bills, they're just non-negotiable for us, right? You guys have control. You're in the majority. You've got 200 bills, whether they be budgetary or policy related. And, we can probably live with 150 of those, but these 10, 15 can't do it, right? And so there's a clock, right? That's the other thing too that's important to know. There is an expiration date on how long this session can last, and they're fearful of that. If you go back to the 2019 legislative session when this was first done, we were gone for, it seems like 8 days, I think. I get confused between how many pounds I lost and how many days we were gone. It was 8 days. When we came back, it was very strategic from the standpoint that there was 1 day left in the legislative session. Right. And so they had hundreds of bills left, though, that they still wanted to get through. But at that point, they required our votes to suspend the rules, to expedite the process and only read the titles of the bills, or forward the bills in the calendar. So just for the folks, and if I get too into the weeds and wonky here, you pull me back in.
I will.
But so first readings is when a bill is read on the House or Senate floor and introduced into committee. Second reading is when it's passed out of committee and it's imminent to come to the Senate or House floor the next business day, or whenever in this case, the Senate president pushes it to the front. And then third reading is when it's actually going to be voted on that day. And so at that point in 2019, let's say they had 200 bills left. Okay, and then the Democrats had, let's say, 60 of those that were critically important to them, right? Well, they couldn't get them all through because of the deadline that was now going to hit. And they needed our votes to be able to suspend the rules, to be able to advance certain bills. And so we were able to stop a lot of truly horrible legislation in 19, plus get a lot of our own constituents' critically important policy and budgetary bills to get your tax dollars back into your hands and in your districts. That's just where all that making the sausage, whatever you want to call it, that kind of negotiation stuff is critical. And it's in the weeds and it's wonky. And I'm not kidding you. Even after 6 years, you're still learning new things all the time. It's an overly complex process.
Sure.
So anyway.
Sure. So yeah, well, there's even our audience here, some are not going to agree on those that walked and those that didn't. you know, but the thing is we have one Republican Senate, you know, and we've our caucus that has we still have a lot of work to do. You guys have a lot of work to do, and so and as you mentioned, there's a lot of bills coming. So we have to move from that and be supportive, I believe, of our senators, so that the rest of the work can get done. Now, wasn't there talk, and maybe there still is, about extending this session even longer? Is that a
So
possibility?
you can't do that. Well, there's ways of doing that, but the way you would most likely see something like that happen is the governor would call for a special session.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's always a threat, especially with Kate Brown. I mean, obviously the rules don't really matter to her.
No,
And
clearly.
she has an incredible amount of dictatorial authority, whether it's properly used or being used through abuse, and being supported through the state Supreme Court, which many of those justices she put in place. So yeah, going back to your point about we've got to support our champions that are there representing our side of the culture fight. You're exactly right. I mean, I can tell you that it's, other than active duty combat, I don't really know what could be much worse than this current era we're going through right now of being an elected servant. If you're doing it for the heart reasons, right? It's not about title. In this case, it's definitely not about salary for anybody.
No, not in Oregon.
Yeah, exactly. If you're doing it for the matters of the heart, and you're doing it for saving the community you love, and bringing forward hope and prosperity for the future, it's a soul bleaching experience, because you're always going to have somebody who is upset with you. You're always going to have somebody that hates you, dislikes what you're doing. Now, that said, there's a lot. In my case, I serve an incredible Senate district, Southwest Oregon. The vast majority of the people that live in my community absolutely support my way of doing things. I mean, I've always been very open and transparent about how I see life. When people ask me a question, I give them an honest response, because I want them to vote to choose the way I am, not something that I have projected as being different than I am, and then they get surprised later. For example, I've had some tough bills in the past where I could have gone either way. There's a lot of gray in Salem, sadly, especially when you're not in control of the agenda, right? The Democrats set the rules, they set the agenda. Yes, we make our own bills as Republicans, but even in the case where we get our bills through the process, it never comes out the way it started, because they influence, and they will sometimes do what we call gut and stuff. So totally wipe away what our original intent was and replace it with something they like. But at the end of the day, it's just difficult stuff. And so I've gone to my constituents several times over the years, whether it be the central committee from Douglas County or Coos County, or do a town hall, and I'll just put it out there. Hey, this is this bill, this is this topic that's going on right now, and I could go either way on it. What do you say, the citizens? And I've really loved using that compass from time to time when it's necessary. But yeah, no, we need support. We need prayer. I can tell you that I am just completely, totally exhausted. There's no breaks. It's just a rat race from start to finish. You know, it's 5.5 months of just war at this point. It's not politics really at this point. It's something far worse. Politics would, traditionally speaking, would be kind of a dream compared to what we're dealing with. The hostility, the aggression, the nastiness that exists inside that building right now is staggering. Even though there's very few people in it, the intensity, you can just feel it. You can cut it with a knife. It's kind of funny. I've watched speeches on the camera from the Senate floor at later dates, and I can remember sitting on the floor watching the debates, and the camera loses probably 90% of the intensity that was on that floor. When you're there in person,
Right.
and for those of you at home that have been there in person, it's amazing how you can just like cut it with a knife sometimes. And so there's going to be a lot more bills like that this year, where it just makes your stomach hurt. So we need your support.
So so you talked about that there's been many bills that you could have supported. And this brings to another question that I have. There was an article in the Portland Tribune recently claiming that you're hiding from your duties as a lawmaker, dodging bills, not doing your job as a senator. So what would you like to say in regard to that, those accusations and that article? It was not flattering. And which is why I wanted you to be on, because this is our open media that is, nobody is censoring to, have, so you can answer that.
So yeah, that I don't know if I'd call it an article. That was an open letter from the Democrat Senate Majority Leader, Rob Wagner. And that's an individual who's called me his friend on several occasions. Um,
I
on the,
didn't realize that
yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so Rob Wagner is the Senate Majority Leader. So you have the Senate President, which is Peter Courtney, and then second in command, if you will, would be Rob Wagner.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really just spoke to the overwhelmingly just dark direction these folks are going, because he twisted the truth at best, completely falsified it at worst. He takes this narrative that the liberal media has been pumping out of false allegations, saying that, like, for instance, for people that read it, he referenced that I allegedly encouraged violent people to attack the Capitol building and attack law enforcement. Wow, literally never happened. Complete lie. But that doesn't seem to matter to these folks anymore. Said that, like as Republicans, we're all being used. It doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter what your background is. We're all becoming conditioned to and used to being called racist, sexist, homophobic, bigots of all shapes and sizes, right? Just not because we are, but just because we're a Republican. That's what the Democrats are now using as their ammunition to gain political power. And I'm not convinced those political leaders on the Democratic side who say such evil things about people really care all that much about the people they claim they're advocating for. I think it's actually just a sick game of using people who have had a lot of pain in life or having societal issues in life or historically marginalized. They're just using those people to hurt us so that they can climb the ladder of power one more step, right, to that total control point. And so Senator Wagner calling me a racist, insinuating that I support child pornography, all because I'm voting no on every single bill this session. Why? He didn't reference why.
So let's answer, why are you voting no on every single bill in this session? I think people want to hear your answer.
So for me, it's what I consider the most noble reason, because I'm here to tell you, it is not fun being the guy that votes no on every single bill. That's never something that I thought in my wildest nightmares I would be forced into doing, but I do feel forced. So again, for my personal beliefs, you, the people of Oregon, being expelled from your Capitol building, there's literally state police cars, concrete block barriers. It's a fortress established to keep you, the citizens of Oregon, in a time of legislation out of your own Capitol building. When the state constitution of Oregon commands us, the legislature and the government of Oregon, to allow you and grant you and bless you access to us, your legislative body. And that's not happening. And so for me, I made a decision back in January, right before this thing really got rolling, and seeing what they were going to be doing, the Democrats, to we, the people of Oregon, because I'm still a citizen just like you. As I said, I can't vote yes in good conscience, because I feel like that's me signing off on and endorsing an abomination. I mean, you really think about it, Sonny. I really don't know what's more scary and elitist than individuals who seek elected office service positions saying, I want to be your voice. I want to be your advocate. I want to be the embodiment of you in the state capitol, in the legislative process. Mm-hmm. And then once they get there, they say, well, we've got these reasons why you're just not good enough to be in here, people who sent me here. I remember pulling up to the Capitol building back in January before the session started. I was going in to do some work in my state office, and my card wasn't working as I was trying to swipe into the Capitol basement to park. And so I pushed the button for the state employee that manages that, which they're just doing their job. I don't have to agree with what's happening there, but that person's not a bad person. They're just doing what they're being told by the speaker, the Senate president, and the governor. I said, why is my legislator ID not letting me into the basement? And the response was, Senator, you're not allowed into the basement, or you're not allowed into the Capitol building today because we're on lockdown. And I said, by whose authority? On whose authority are you saying that the people's representative of the Senate can't come into the Capitol building to do business of the people? Because
Right.
I question who has that authority. But here's the thing. That offended me that I had to argue my way in. But what offended me even more, frankly, Sonny, was 30 seconds later, after I demanded an answer of by whose authority, which they obviously didn't have that authority, not the employee, but the person who told them to do that.
Yes.
They hadn't let me in, but they would not have let you in if it was you.
Right. Of course not. But it does, of course, they wouldn't let me in. Lord knows the citizens of Oregon have certainly been locked out. But you, as an elected representative of District 1, should 100%, and your staff have that access. Now, I'm not saying, you know what, we need access too. I certainly don't agree with our state house being locked down by our tyrannical governor by any means. But to have your credentials or any of our senators or representatives' current credentials not work, and to get told that is just, that's crazy.
But that's where it is for me.
So
Growing up,
so you are protest voting no, that's what I'm hearing, because the state house is closed.
absolutely, because I feel I know, being in there 6+ years now, I've seen the regression of my
Okay.
colleagues left. I've seen them go from pounding their chests on the House of Representatives floor when I was in the House, saying this is the people's house and we're here to represent the people, and the people first and the people always.
Mhm.
And now, as they've gotten this, what they consider to be just a free pass to kind of do to whom whatever they want in the name of COVID-19, it's truly terrifying. They're telling people that own restaurants, mom and pop restaurants, gyms. They've told people at churches, like, you're either restricted on how many people, or you can't be open at all. Or like Kate Brown said, turn in your neighbors if you see 6 or more, if you see more than 6
Oh,
people.
yeah. Trying to turn us into the Gestapo out here, it's awful.
That's right. And so to me, what I'm seeing is a rise of fascist elitism.
Yeah.
That it doesn't end well for the people. And if it doesn't end well for the people, I can't sign on. And so that's where it comes from. My own bills have died because of my lack of willing to vote for them. So I'm genuine in what I'm doing.
So what bills have you submitted? That was actually like my next question is, anything that you have submitted in the Senate.
So a few that I'll reference right now is, one of my bills was, believe it or not, if you are an EMT and a violent individual punches you while you're in an ambulance or in a hospital, they can be charged with a felony. And I'm saying, like, assaults you, not just punch you, but like tries to violently hurt you or maim you or whatever. They can get charged. The perpetrator gets charged up to with a felony, right? But if you're a nurse, believe it or not, it's a misdemeanor only. You could have EMT, nurse, same situation, both get assaulted, both get brutally injured. And because one's a nurse, she or he can only see justice up to a misdemeanor, which is a slap on the wrist, really, for that kind of an offense.
Yeah.
Whereas the other person can pursue full charges through the district attorney's office of a felony. So that's one that a nursing constituent had brought to our attention a couple of years ago that we've tried to push through. Another one is protecting our children in the form of, which is ironic when you think about what the Democratic Senate Majority Leader put in that horrific open letter to the Portland Tribune about me. I'm passionate about protecting our children from online pornography and the corruption that instills in our children's hearts. It is far too easy for our young children to just accidentally access very damaging adult content. And so our bill would have sought to make it to where you would have had to plug in some sort of ID proving that you're 18 or older in order to be able to access an adult website, right? And so it's about protecting our children. Never got a hearing, which is, again, ironic that the Senate Majority Leader made the assertions that he did, knowing full well that it's his majority, it's his power that is stopping a bill like that from even getting a hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Okay, so there's a few. There's a few. So it is affecting you. Your no vote is affecting you as well, of things not getting out of committee then.
Oh,
as-
absolutely. But it's not affecting, the vote is not affecting it as much from a numbers standpoint of like whether it'll pass. There was one bill that had a chance to get out of committee the other day, and the good chair was kind enough to try to get it out. But their colleagues, out of spite, said that they were going to vote no. And so unless I voted yes, it wouldn't have been able to make it out. That bill was focused on this issue, and my good staff are the good folks that really deserve the credit on putting that great bill together, where it focuses on making sure in the future that if we ever have a similar circumstance like we've been experiencing the last year here, that people that find themselves in hospital situations and whatnot, or end of life scenarios, are not locked out away from their family and just left to die alone in a hospital room, which happened to a lot of Oregonians. It happened to a lot of Americans across this country. And so we want to do some work on making sure that we don't just have this overreaction, one size fits all, have people that we love and have known our whole lives go into a hospital situation, sit there for a week or 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, and then just die because Kate Brown and the Oregon Health Authority says so, right? So
Yeah.
that was right there where numbers would have come into play. But most of them, the majority just won't give them a hearing. And so my vote actually didn't
And
even
that's
matter.
the sad part.
Exactly.
That is the sad part. So
Most
we're going to change hats now. We're going to change the hat, the Senate hat. Actually, I have one that is for a question that's for both your hats. And so the Senate hat and the chairman of the Oregon Republican Party hat. So there is Senate Bill 313. And that states a state central committee may include as a voting member any individuals designated by the party. So it has an emergency clause to it, which clearly it is not an emergency. So anytime emergency clauses can get removed, I say hooray. So the people can answer and bring a petition and let's get it on the ballot and let the people vote. But this would allow anyone to have a seat at the table of the state central committee that has not been elected by the delegates of the state central committee. So what are your thoughts on Senate Bill 313?
I'm not, it's not going to be in any of my committees. And so it's not something that I've been focused on, but I don't even know what the intent behind that would be.
Wouldn't it be in a judiciary committee since it changes one of our ORSs?
Not necessarily. No,
okay.
it could go, I've seen bills come through certain committees where it's in a judiciary and it clearly should be in a natural resource or vice versa. Again, the Democrats set the rules. They can quite literally do just about anything they want. I've seen stuff go through committees on multiple occasions in the 6+ years I've been in the legislature where I'm just like, why? And I mean, we'll ask that on the record. It's like, why is this in this committee right here? Or better still, they'll have it go through a policy committee when it's clearly a budgetary issue, and they don't send it through Ways and Means to go through the vetting process. And that's usually to circumnavigate the process because they know they don't really want to talk about the budgetary impacts. They just want to force it through and pick up the pieces later.
Okay, so I understand that it won't be in your committee, but have you heard of Senate Bill 313 yet at all?
I've heard of it, but I haven't put any research into it. I mean, we're talking almost 4,000 bills that we have to look through.
Right, I understand. And that's exactly what Senator Girard said, and like 1,000 of them, might get passed. And as you stated before, we got started tonight, before the launch, how many bills did your committee hear today?
Roughly 20. They were bringing up bills for work session and passing them at about 45 to 60 seconds a piece. We did have public hearings later that slowed the committee down, but I mean, yeah, it's just incredible to me how quickly they will push stuff through without any public hearing at times, or very little to none. That's been one of the things that, again, not having the people in the building, Sunny, it's shown dramatic impacts on the quality of the legislation, the recklessness of the pace. In years past, it would be very rare to have a bill come forward, technical fix, move a comma over here kind of bills, where you had less than 3 to 5 constituents speak on it, lobbyists, just folks from the community or from across the state. And many times you'd have bills that you had to do evening sessions because you're going to have literally hundreds of people, and they would set like ridiculous time restraints of like 1 minute for testimony. People would drive 200 miles to give a 1 minute testimony. Now you're seeing an average of maybe 3 or 4 people on sometimes really important big bills actually getting a testimony. And then to watch the Democrats become extremely hostile towards expert witnesses or individuals like yourself, volunteers that really know their stuff. I watched the Democrats the other day. I saw one of the senators from Eugene lambaste an individual who was representing the mink farms that are looking like they could potentially have their entire livelihoods just eradicated and eliminated as an industry. Just, it's illegal, can't do it here in Oregon without compensation. And that person was lambasted by the Eugene senator, and that senator in his questioning, which was, and really it's completely out of line, said, "Are you being paid to give testimony here today?" I mean, that question is just really kind of ridiculous because it's not really relevant. The facts of what they're saying, is it true? Does it apply to the merit of the bill or does it not? That's what's relevant. Furthermore, it's inconsistent because you see the public labor unions or radical leftist special interest groups come before these committees all the time. And if someone like me said, "Hey, are you getting paid to do this?" They would gavel me down most of the time and not even let that question be answered. So.
Sure. So, well, I'll tell you, on the Senate Bill 313, I hope everybody votes no on that, because I don't think I read there's only been 4 testimonies submitted. The hearing might even have been today. I don't remember now. But because, the state central committees, we vote who has a seat at the table. And so personally, I don't think people that haven't been voted on by the state central committee should have a vote. It's one thing to have to listen in, but to have a vote on the state central committee, I don't think that's a good deal.
Well, and
What do you think?
unfortunately, because I haven't read it myself, I can't speak prolifically on it. But as I'm listening to the content of what you're describing, I mean, it sounds like an effort to, because again, sadly, the Democratic leadership has shown to be the kind of people that will use tactics like this if they can get them through, where I would say they would use something like that to plant people that they want to get into an organization like ours, where all of a sudden the filter is gone, right? They're able to start pushing certain players and certain people into your organization and start corrupting it, start turning it against itself. So yeah, it's very concerning, but unfortunately not surprising at all with this legislature.
Well, one of the comments of the 4 that had been submitted was actually from a Democrat, and it was 2 pages, 1.5 pages long, type single space. So that was a lot. And he actually, I believe it was a man, and he said that he basically said, this is what the Democrats are already doing in the Oregon Democrat Party. And he says, I think they're just looking to basically codify what they've always been doing. And so his testimony was an eye-opener to me, because I don't know anything about the Democrat Republican Party. And but it needs to be that, frankly, it just needs, so he was not in favor of it either. And I think that should definitely say no, be a no vote there. So
Well,
I do have, go ahead.
I am starting to notice, it is slow, but I am starting to notice that there is starting to be a little bit of a divide within the ranks of the Democrat base. I think as you see the Nancy Pelosi's, the Shamia Fagans, the Kate Browns, the Ocasio-Cortezes, the Chuck Schumers, these folks go more and more and more left and radical. You're starting to see some of the Democratic Party, at least at the grassroots level, I think especially if they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s of age, say, hey, wait a second, this stuff is getting a little aggressive and crazy. I'm not really sure where you're going with this kind of stuff. We're seeing former Democrat Congress people starting to pop up now. I was reading, I don't recall the name of the former Congresswoman, but I believe she's from Hawaii. On Fox News, I was reading an article the other night. speaking to just how this stuff is going too far. The censorship is going too far. This stuff is, it's not the Democrat Party anymore. It's starting to become something else, and they're not liking it. I hope that the dissension in the ranks starts to grow at a quicker pace than I'm seeing it, but at least we're starting to see some cracks in it, because the radical faction is just running away with things.
Well, it is. And I know over here, I've seen this past year when we were doing the recall and that, Democrats, I have friends that are Democrats. And of course, I always talk to them and go, hey, you need to change party. Well, you know what? I saw a lot of them change party now, and they're going, and I'm hearing from people, as I'm sure a lot of chairs are around our state, is the Democrat Party is not what it used to be. It wasn't the party of the Kennedys, and the party has walked away from, has changed. And so I think it would bring many more people over to the Republicans. That way I could, only hope for that, right?
Yep.
We
Yeah,
could
no, and thank you for the good work of trying to work on people. I mean, that's what it takes, right? I mean, you have to go out and you have to evangelize, if you will, right? You have to spread the good news of the pro-Constitution, pro-freedom, pro-family environment that the Republican Party is, and be able to help present the case and show the contrast between ourselves and that radical left faction of the Democratic wing that is really controlling things. And I really think that there's going to be some great opportunities in the future for us to grow our ranks as the Democrats push leftward. Over on the coast, which was important in helping getting Senator Dick Anderson elected, the Coos County Republicans were reporting to me as early as, I want to say it was May of last year, that they were getting anywhere from 5 to sometimes 15 individuals a day that were Democrat registered voters that were coming in to re-register as Republicans. And that trend followed all the way through to election day. And I think the good senator won by just over 2,000 votes, whereas before we lost that district. And I think it had been 20 years since we've had that district in the past. So there is movement.
Yes, there is. There is movement. And the more our tyrannical governor does, the more that people want to leave that party, for sure. So I do have another question I have is, do you think because of your voting record this year, and seems to be a divide, I hope there isn't, but there seems to be a divide a bit. And your chair as the chairman of the Oregon Republican Party. Do you think your position as a senator can hurt the Oregon Republican Party or hurt us in the 2022 election? And I say that, I ask that because of the media stance. I think within the party, it's one thing, but it's the media and what they could do to us.
Well, I think it's a yes and no, and that's not a fence-sitting answer. I'm saying I think it's all on how you handle it, right? I mean, which is the case in most situations in life. I think it could actually bring us a lot of blessing, because it seems to attract a lot more lightning, right, than if it's just a standalone chair without that other position in the legislative assembly. I can say that again, the media is choosing to completely lie about myself, the Democrats, because they clearly see me as a threat. Otherwise, the Democrat Senate Majority Leader wouldn't spend all that time writing up a bunch of lies that frankly put him in, I think, a bit of legal jeopardy by how slanderous and completely off the rails of fact it was, which is interesting. And so it cuts both ways. I'm determined to make it a positive for us. I can tell you that it definitely helps when it comes to fundraising. Last week, you and I talked a little bit on the phone when you were kind enough to reach out to me to invite me to be on the Thursday night special here. We were able to secure a $35,000 donation from a first-time donor to the ORP. And that is something that just from that one donor alone in the conversation that I had, I feel it's very likely that person is likely to give substantially more potentially this year right away. And that's big stuff, especially early on in the election cycle like we find ourselves, because that gives, it's like investing in the stock market, right? You put $50,000 in right now in the first 10 years of your adult life versus 200,000 over a 40-year period. The 50,000 pays off way bigger, even if you didn't put in any more of the last 30 years, right? Versus the other model. And so I'm going to be spending a lot more time up in Portland here. Probably, I think it's about 3 weeks from now. I've got a fundraiser that's shaping up that I'm going to be going to, that I've been invited to. I talked to a millennial age young lady today in Salem about getting me connected and doing some small fundraisers with her community that she's from in the Portland region. And I can tell you that that title of senator just means something to people subconsciously. Sometimes I think it means a little too much, but you know, I'm on the inside and I know how average we really are. So, you know, but
Yeah.
I can that when I was a representative versus now being a senator, when I would tell people in the past, hey, they'd say, what do you do? You know, and I'd be like, well, I'm a landscaper and I'm a representative. And they'd be like, for Home Depot, like what are you a rep for? You know, right? But when they ask you now and you say I'm a senator, all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, right? And so if you know your stuff, which I try to, tonight's not my best example because I am really that tired. But I feel like I've shown that I can do a pretty good job fundraising for the party and for our legislative seats in the past and going forward. And I think that title in the end is actually going to be a very good thing. But like I said, when I was running for this position to serve you good folks, I'm going to leave that up to you, you know, in the coming months. If you guys feel like it's a hindrance, I'm here to serve you, not myself. And we can have that discussion you know, in the summer or the fall after we've had a little bit more time to see how this matures. But I think in some ways, if we harness it right, it actually brings us a lot of free PR because, like I said, it makes it right now, for some reason, the Democrats are really focused on me, even though I'm not making big floor speeches. I'm not making, you know, huge statements in committee. I consider myself a pretty mannerly person. You know, my mom and my dad, I feel like raised me right that way. I don't always want to be mannerly. I can tell you that when I'm in the Senate. But I feel like I do a good job of representing you good men and women by holding my tongue when I should, but I also speak up when I should. And it gives me a podium that I otherwise wouldn't.
Sure. Okay, so the last question, and we've gone longer than what we normally do, but you know what? You're a special guest. You wear 2 hats, so we're allowed to do that.
I get called special a lot, but tonight's positive, and that's a change.
So what is your vision for the ORP immediately and in the near future? And then what do you see as the priorities for the Oregon Republican Party?
So right now, we got to focus on those school boards. We need to take back the hearts and minds of our children's lives. I mean, folks, like, it's not just about can they do math, which the Oregon schools, maybe they can't read, maybe they can't do math. I just hitting on that real quick. My oldest son is 7.5. He's in 2nd grade. He's a little young for his grade. He's a brilliant child, gets it from his mother, clearly. And when he went to kindergarten at a small private school in the Roseburg area, he was reading in a matter of just 2 months. Then we switch him over to the local public school district because we had moved. And he went backwards.
Wow.
Then we back to a different private school for 2nd grade and he launches forward again. So just from the standpoint of curriculum, the quality of teaching, bear in mind, those amazing 2 women that were his kindergarten and 2nd grade teacher, they make less than half the money in total benefits package of the public school educator. And here's the other thing too. I really thought a lot of his 1st grade teacher at the public school. I think she's an excellent human being and she's very talented and she put a lot of work into those kids, but she had 40+ kids to teach and a curriculum that made it impossible for her to actually do a good job like she wanted to, like her passion drove her to do, right? So the public school system is broken. We can't just stand back and watch this stuff continue on. Oregon is known nationwide for having some of the poorest performance in the entire nation. We're usually in the bottom 3. The bottom 3.
True. And we spend the most on our education and we're in the bottom, in the gutter.
Exactly. I mean, it's like you and I would not go to a dealership and buy a car that costs what a Lexus does. But you know, it has the reliability of an old Model T, right? We just that's counterintuitive. That's counter logic. So there's the side of prolific reading, prolific education, prolific critical skills, critical thinking skills, right? That's something that's not being taught in American culture anymore. But then there's the part of this radicalism that is being pressed into the minds and hearts and souls of our children. And that should be what terrifies us the most. And so we can't complain about it. We must take action. We are men and women of action. We are men and women that compete in life. That's what's made us successes in life. And so we should be no less competitive for the hearts and souls of our children. And we have an opportunity to do that right now, right here, just around the corner in May. We have all these school board positions coming. So the deadline to file for those is passed, but there are incredible women and incredible men all across the state now in this wave of passion that is surging up after last year's events with COVID-19 and the presidential election, and just seeing where the Democrats are taking us. We have incredible candidates to go support. We need to get their signs out. We need to get the bumper stickers out. We need to help them develop their platform and get that message out. And we need to vote. And we need to just do that right now. So that's the front load right now. Obviously, fundraising is a big deal, but I'm working. What is that fundraising going to go towards, right? Right. It's not just we can have a huge balance in our bank account. That's not worth anything. What are we going to invest it in? Data. The more we can know about the voters and whatnot, the more we can micro target as a party and help the House, the Senate, the commissioners, all the way back down to the school boards and whatnot. The more we know about folks, the more we can micro target, the more we can message them on the issues that matter to them. Jane Smith may be huge on the Second Amendment. She's a lifetime NRA member, right? But she doesn't really care about property taxes or land use policy. But Joe Stansley across the street, all he cares about is land use planning, right? Because he can't get his shop permitted, right? And then you skip over another street, that person cares about property taxes. So that's where data in the new digital age really becomes critical. So for the most part, we're going to be spending that money on candidate training tools, data, so we can get those candidates elected. Again, sign data banking. We're building that sign. And Sunny, I'd love you to be a part of that. You've got a big section of the state over there. I need good men.
Speaking of signs, what surprised me, I asked someone if, hey, did one of our former electeds, I'm not going to say any names here, but one of our former electeds share their sign location with you, the newly elected? No. And so, you know what? This is on the politicians. Hello, the politicians need to be sharing information, because certainly I have them, but I will tell you, and is that I have, like, for example, here, we've got sign locations, but then I approach, so-and-so, and I say, hey, I wanted like to put these signs here, and they go, nope, you can put this one and that one. I don't want the other. So just because you have a sign location does not mean that you can put anything up there. And we have to respect the person's property that they're allowing us to put that, and also still ask permission. Every season. Yep. It is because I want to keep the locations that we have and respect that. In fact, I saw a candidate sign that I didn't put up when I was coming back from the west side this past weekend, and I went, oh, that's not good. Mm-hmm. It was on the wrong side of the freeway. So I need to let them know to, get your people out there and get that sign down, because it is, way time over for that. Well, so listen, I do have another question, is that I saw in the paper, I saw an article the other day that someone has filed a recall on Senator Girard. What are your thoughts on that? I will tell you, I don't support this. Our senators, our Republicans will fall. One, I'm a Republican, and our Republicans don't attack Republicans. We need to attack the Democrats. I would like to know your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, no, it's unfortunate because those things are costly. As you know, I don't support recalls against the Republicans. There's only 11 of us, plus a conservative independent, versus 17 very liberal Democrats and one conservative Democrat and Betsy Johnson. So we're already shorthanded. You know that, I know that. It's unfortunate. And that's the problem with fear, right? We're all driven by fear of something, fear of losing loved ones, fear of losing our rights, fear of losing our country. And I'm seeing a lot of infighting. I know you're seeing it as well. It's amazing how it's affecting everyone. It's affecting more liberal leaning Republicans. It's affecting all the way to very, very, very conservative Republicans. And I'm watching people, whether it be social media, letters to the editor, chatter and email, everybody's fighting with each other. We're all tearing each other apart. And the unfortunate problem about it is, and I don't claim to fully understand the psychology behind this, but for some reason, the Democrats rarely seem to infight. I don't understand it. Like I said earlier, there is starting to become
I don't either.
yeah.
They stay united and lockstep, and I guess they've just got a heavy hand over them. I don't know what
Well,
they do.
I also think it could be on the psychology side of things. I mean, they're in the party they're in for a reason, right? For the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, some people it's because their parents were and their parents were and all that. But I think that's becoming less and less the way it is, with politics becoming so in your face these days. You can't get away from it, whether you're watching sports, commercials, TV shows, especially the left. They're just in our faces, right? But what I think it may be, as much as anything, is it's the personality types that are drawn to the left side of things. It's very much a just follow the leader type of mentality, and I think that's why they're comfortable with watching their Second Amendment rights at times just get wiped away, their First Amendment rights wiped away. It's like, well, because Kate Brown says it's good, it just must be, and that's so dangerous. We can't be the kind of people, Americans that is, that follow personality. We must follow substance. We must look at the merits of what someone's argument is, not who it came from, right?
Yeah.
And so, no, it's unfortunate to hear about that. And I hadn't seen an article, but I'd heard from people in the building the last couple of days that had happened. So it's too bad.
Yes, well, we do the captive audience 4 days a week. And so there's a lot of articles that we read and trying to pay attention to what's happening in the media. And so I was very surprised to see that. I would not wish anybody to be supporting a Republican senator's recall, because you know what, we are in the super minority. It's a tough position where you are, and you guys get beat up enough, and we have to support our senators. We do. We can't afford to lose any, and I would hate to see some get so discouraged that they just say, I quit,
Yeah,
because
and
that's not going to help us.
I know all too well what that feeling's like. I've had conservatives say that I'm not conservative enough. I've had liberals say otherwise, and as far as Republican range, right? And it like I said earlier, you find when you're representing 140,000 citizens, you just can't make everybody happy, and that's the tough thing about it. Like you go into this, if you go into this for heart reasons, it really weighs heavy on you, because you want to make people happy. I'm very much a customer service oriented person, but I've come to the realization before I got into the legislature, but it's even become more entrenched in me, the knowledge that I can't make everybody happy. So I therefore have to push forward and do what I think is right, first and foremost and always. And when you're dealing with all these bills that you have no control over, which the good senator is no different. I tell you, you wouldn't believe, and before you get into a position like this, you listen to talk radio, you read this, you do that. You always say, "Oh, they're just all politicians. They're just feeding us a line of bull. There's no gray. It's black and it's white." Man, I'm telling you, when you're looking at a 120-page bill and it's got 90% great stuff in it, but tucked away in like page 35,
Right.
it's like, wow, that's not good.
Exactly.
And when I first got into the House 6 years ago, I was actually on multiple occasions able to go to my Democratic colleagues and say, listen, I can vote for this bill if you can take this out. And on several occasions, they were willing to do that. Now I go to them and I say, here's a compromise that I have that I feel like accomplishes what you're driving at here, but it doesn't take the citizens' rights away. To vote for annexation of a fire district, for example, was one case.
Mhm.
And the Senate Democrat chair of that committee said, that looks like a perfect compromise. I see where you're going with that. I appreciate it. I like it.
Mhm.
But we have the votes. And I don't think the rest of the Democratic members on the committee really want to mess around with modifying that and go through the process of this, and that. So we'll probably just pass it out as is. Thank you very much. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that just kind of guts you.
Yeah, and unfortunately, from what I hear, the day of compromise is long gone.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we're seeing it at the national level, we're seeing it here. And but by golly, we better keep it in our local level, at some point here.
Yeah.
Well, Dallas, Senator Hurd, Chairman Dallas Hurd, thank you so much. We've got an hour's program here, and thank you very much for joining me on Captive Audience. I really appreciate it, and I would like to have you on again.
I'd love to. And thank you so much, Sonny. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody that's out there. And I just wish you a great weekend, and let's go win those school board races.
Exactly. Thank you. Good
Yeah.
night.